Oh, hello, crafters. My name is Shannon Twohy, and I am here to take you with Knit and Bolt with this little cute craft kit from Petite Felts in a little intro to needle felting. And you have in your kit everything that you need to felt. So instructions, which we don't need because I'm taking you through this, a little felting block that you'll be using so you hopefully don't poke your fingers, no promises guaranteed, a succulent pot that you'll put your finished creation in, we'll set that to the side. We have two needles. So felting needles are based off, the size is the smaller the number, the larger and thicker the needle. These are sharp. Please don't stab yourself to end up in the hospital. So I'm going to put those to the side. Just a little thing about form right away is we want to use an up and down motion. We want to avoid kind of holding it like a pen at an angle. You're more likely to break your needle. If you break your needle, it's no big deal. You are likely to do that at some point in time. And then you have some roving. So this is a brown color and a nice lovely green that you'll be using. This is unspun. You'll see this in a final form, spun into sweaters and the like. What you do is rather than cutting it or you can see that the fibers are really strong and thick. We know that wool is one of the strongest materials around. That's why sweaters last so long. So we hand card our wool. We do this by taking off little pieces and getting little bits. And so these will form our leaves of our succulents. Our goal is to make 10. And so the thing about felting is that it's a time-consuming process. So it's a great thing to do while you're listening to podcasts or watching a TV show that you've seen a couple times. So what I like to do when I start felting is to kind of do the whole set up your kitchen ingredients before you start. So I know that I'm going to be making 10 leaves. I have all this beautiful roving. And so I'm just going to know that I have to make about 4 blueberry-ish size pieces. When you kind of ball it up, you see already that it gets smaller. So I'm gonna not do that. I'm going to take those and know that I have those to make just as starter bases. And then I'll put that to the side. And so with these leaves, I'll take my needle, and again, super sharp. And these needles have little barbs which hook into the roving. And so the roving, when they are repeatedly stab into it, the proteins start to lock together and bind together. You agitate the wool, and that's what causes it to start to felt together. And the thing is, you don't need to stab it all the way through. That's just using way too much time and energy to get what you need to get done, really. It's just, again, time consuming. You can start to shape, and then you'll occasionally want to take that off that block because you'll start felting into that block. And I start with that beginning leaf, and you can already tell that it's starting to get smaller. It's starting to bind together. Those little needle marks will start to go away the more I stab into it. And then when you start getting into your basic shape, obviously watch your fingers. And then similarly to rolling out a pie dough, I switch the side because you don't want to favor one side versus the other, because then one side gets really, really felted and then the other is like, what's happening? I'm ignored. You don't want to middle child syndrome your felt. Yeah. And then when you start doing this, the sides, this is really where you need to watch your fingers, because you can start to, get the details, that divot. If you're into plants and raised, 300 plants as I did during the pandemic, succulents can have that little divot and you can start getting those details. The cool thing about felting is it's a very sculptural art form. The other thing I want to note that with your leaf, because leaf later we'll be connecting this together, is that you want to leave that end a little more loose and not felt that, because we'll be connecting that later. And again, this is a time-consuming process, so if you're like, I'm stabbing this over and over and over again, it feels like I'm not really getting anywhere, that is completely normal. If you want to do fine detail work, you want a finer needle typically, but again, it's just kind of focusing in on those areas. If there's an area that isn't behaving, sometimes adding a little extra roving into that can really help. But it's really about adding, continuing to add pressure into it. If you can felt with any type of roving. There's certain sheep breeds that are actually more difficult to work with and that don't quite felt as well, and so sometimes it can actually be a materials issue, but a lot of times it's just really you're not actually stabbing, you're not reenacting Psycho enough with it. And so you can see right there that I started to add some of that divot into that. Right here I focused more on there, and that's a little less, it's softer, and you can start to feel that kind of springiness where that's felting together. And naturally, if there's parts that are a little thinner, then you can always add more roving there. I'm going to focus a little more energy into that area right there to get a little more definition into that leaf. And a little trick I like to do for finishing too is to give it a little rub in my hands too. The warmth of your own hands can often start the felting process too, and it just gives it a nice little smooth definition. So we'll call that one done, and on to the next 1400. Magic. I did all of that in 3 seconds. Just kidding. So you'll have some leftover roving, and the fun thing is that you really do get to mix kind of your colors with what you want to do. I chose more of an avant-garde look when it came to my leaves because I wanted it to look a little more organic and natural. You can kind of play around with it. We don't have to be perfectionists when it comes to this. And so what you first want to do is, after hopefully not pricking your fingers, is you want to arrange your bottom layer. And so remember how I said you want to keep those loose ends, and we can start kind of shaping what leaves you want next to each other. Again, it's not an exact science. Turn the perfectionist part of your brain off. And I think that that'll look good, hopefully, right? And again, being careful not to stab yourself, we'll just start hooking these babies together, and I'll hopefully not block it completely, and just start on one part. And you can see I have some variegation when it comes to the greens. Some are lighter, some are a little darker. You can get real artistic with your color blending. You get a real variety of different shades of green with this. And then I want to make sure that I pull this a little so that I'll know what's loose and where I really need to adhere my succulents a little more. And I can even take some of this, you'll have a little extra roving, and I can nest that in and get that secure. Nobody will know you did that. That'll be hidden by the next layer. It'll give a nice secure base. There we go. And then I'll take those smaller leaves that I did, and same difference. Same idea, not difference. I will not throw them at you. Arranging it so that I like that, and I'm actually switching that green so there'll be a little more contrast over there because that leaf is lighter. And again, taking my needle and poking that together. And this is where you really get into that sculptural shaping of it. So you can have that pointed up a little more. You can decide how open you want your succulent to be. Again, the shape will change a little bit once you pot it. But I want to make sure it's nice and secure. And from here, I'll take it and do the back to make sure that's felting. Again, this will get hidden, so you don't really have to go ham on making that look great. But gorge. And then just for a nice little finish, you can take a teeny little ball of your roving and place it in the middle. Actually, that I want to be even smaller. To press in and just hide any of those seams that might have been created when assembling that. I'm going to press that in to there so that connects. And there we go. And so from here we have this brown roving. And again, this is what's going to go into the pot that you put to the side. It's about a tennis ball amount when you put it together. And a lot of this will be hidden. So you can start just kind of doing a loose ball with it just to get it kind of fitting in there. A lot of these needles also, you can get a needle holder that's like a punch needle. And so then you can get more surface needles so that it's not a singular needle. Highly recommend for larger projects and areas that need a lot of work. But this is not an exact science. In this, you can kind of see, definitely want it to be more. You can get a feel of what it will look like. I might even actually take some of this off because that's a bit there. You can always take away and add, which is cool. It's harder, obviously. You can't do that once it's felted, so you have to make the decision before you felted it together. And I tend to avoid, with some of the detail work, you can cut it, but with larger swaths, you kind of want to avoid cutting the roving because it can look like a dog with a bad haircut. So that's why we hand card it. And so from there, I'll take my little succulent and place it gently on the little soil, and I'll start felting it all together. And from here, this is where we can get into the shaping of how we want our leaves to lay. You can start to you can felt the leaf down into it a little more if you want your succulent to be more open. And you can really experiment with how that sets in. And again, there's different style. Everybody has their own style of felting. Some people really, really like to felt tightly, and some people like to felt where things are a little softer with softer edges. And the more experience you have, that's where you kind of start to decide what aesthetic you like and what feel you like with your needle felting. I'm just gonna plop that in here and get a look-see. Oh my gosh, for cute. I'm gonna felt that in there a little more. And I see a loose piece there, so I'm going to just attack it in here. What's nice now that you have a bunch of fiber in here, you can use that as your felting block. And let that shape right there. And with this leftover roving, you can make another one, or you could add some little moss to the side. You can redefine some of these leaves. The sky's kind of the limit, but here you go. You have a little felted succulent that you cannot kill. Thanks. Once again, I'm Shannon with Knit and Bolt, and I hope you enjoyed your dipping your toes into needle felting.